Welcome to the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast, episode 60. My name is Alina Warwick, and today we have Timothy Roman on the show. But before we continue with this episode, I wanted to ask if you can share some love by subscribing to the podcast and leaving a rating. If you leave a rating, your name may be dropped in one of my future episodes. So stay tuned and connected.
Tough during the time that we were growing up. It was very poor. There was no middle class essentially. And it was just, day-to-day stuff. And it was almost like borderline third world. And you were like borderline at a barter system where, you're going to outside of the city to see who's got a chicken and then, who's got the butter. And, because on the market, due to either sanctions or shortage of material, things are either astronomically expensive or they're just lack of.
Tim came to the United States when he was 13 years old from Russia with his family. Growing up in Russia, they were by no means a wealthy family. He was born before the collapse of the Soviet Union, where food and your basic necessities were scarce. But when he came to the United States, he quickly realized that there was so much freedom and a wealth of abundance, so he ended up getting in with the wrong crowd. He dropped out of high school, started selling drugs, and his journey was filled with financial distress and incarceration. While being in jail, he realized that he's throwing his life away in the land of opportunities and decided to go full circle in the other direction. Tim started his company, Imperial Kitchen and Bath, at 28 years old. His successes are beyond his wildest dreams, and now at 34 years old, he operates 3 different companies. This episode is filled with so many useful and powerful tips that anyone can implement in their own business and have tremendous success. So let's dive right in and hear all about his journey. All right, Tim, thank you so much for coming on the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm super excited to hear all about your journey. So welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So let's talk about your immigrant journey. Tell us where you're from and when did you come to the United States?
I'm from the former Soviet Union because I was born in 86 and that was pre-fallout. So it's now the Russian Federation. So you could say from Russia generally. And I came here when I was about 12 years old, just turned 13.
Okay. And so I'm assuming you came with your family?
Yes, my mother and father and a sister.
Okay. And why did your parents decide to move?
The American dream in a punchline, just in seeking a better life. And we've had relatives and friends of relatives that had migrated here during the 70s, or I forget, whenever there was that time window where lots of people from the Soviet Union migrated. And, we never got a chance to get out, I guess. And this was like a second wave. And it was like either now or never. And, because now it's like extremely hard. So it was just, hey, let's put all our ducks in a row and kind of cash out, and that's it, and try to see if there's a better, greener grass on the other side.
Yeah. And did your family have any family or friends when they first immigrated?
Yeah, we've had some family. My mother's parents were here.
Oh, okay. Awesome. And let's talk a little bit about what it was like growing up in Russia.
Tough during the time that we were growing up. It was very poor. There was no middle class essentially. And it was just, day-to-day stuff. And it was almost like borderline third world. And you were like borderline at a barter system where, you're going to outside of the city to see who's got a chicken and then, who's got the butter. And, because on the market, due to either sanctions or shortage of material, things are either astronomically expensive or they're just lack of. So it was just tough. I just remember nothing but like hardship. And it was just very exciting to see if there was a change to that, of course.
Yeah, I remember my mom telling me that when they were growing up, they had 10 kids in their family and they had chicken like twice a year, and they would like boil the chicken and they would rip the chicken apart, and you really just got like a sliver, like a really tiny piece of, the meat, and that's it. Like the next meat you're going to have is in a couple of months. So
Yeah, it's really scarce as far as like just basic necessities, so it's kind of just sad all all around.
And what about the education system? Was it prone for, your cousins or the people that you were surrounded to seek higher education, go to university? Was that prominent?
Yeah, that was really the only way. When you're sort of not really a democratic state and you don't really have a lot of support from state and third parties and free commerce and freedom of speech and freedom of media and all those things, it's very hard to be an entrepreneur and be an artist or be a celebrity. So a lot of people just kind of stick to the tried and true, which is, you stick the school route, and or if your family was already in business or currently is in business, you just naturally follow that. So in our case, it was neither. I was just not a good student. I got terrible grades from the beginning, from ever since I could remember, and I could not concentrate. So yeah, I guess that was really the only two options.
And what did your parents do for a living?
My dad was actually a neurosurgeon that downgraded to like a consultant for a rehab center that specialized in like handicapped children. So, neuroscience and neurology and things like that. And my mother was a school teacher teaching home ed, specifically like for girls.
Oh, nice. Okay, so let's jump back into when you guys came. You were 12 years old. What were some of the struggles that you had to go through?
The main one was for me was just a language, really, because I came here at a young enough age where, you're just a sponge, and it's easy to adapt socially because you just mimic, right, what's happening around you. It's very easy to be fluid and blend in, especially in a very culturally open and accepted country like America. The problem was just the language, really. That was just the main thing, because opportunities were all around you as compared to where we just came from. So it was just a matter of like, can I communicate, the things that I'm feeling, the humor, the sarcasm, right? The things that you normally would want to do, right? As just like a
Mhm.
human being socially. That was probably the hardest part for me.
And did your parents know any English when they moved?
No, no, none of us did.
Okay, and so how did you guys get transitioned into the culture? Where did your parents find their first jobs? How was that journey like?
Odd type jobs were the types that my parents would grab that are all available to your typical immigrant community, babysitting and helping out physically or like cleaning houses and things like that. But there was really no like school or anything. There was very basic ESL, I remember, for me in middle school for about a year or so, and then I just went off to like regular English class. And then for my parents, as they went off to work, and like get more stable jobs, they were able to, obviously kind of get the same thing that I was getting in school, right? You're surrounded by the language all day long. People are helping you out. People are like slowing down and explaining things to you if they see you're not really getting it. So it really helped them a lot. And, they really picked it up pretty quickly.
Were you guys on any government assistance at all?
No.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. So, before you tell our listeners about your company, Imperial Kitchen and Bath, tell us a little bit about the path you took. And I know I read about your journey in Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk, and you had quite an astonishing journey. So, let's hear about that.
Yeah. I think back to your point of like, what was the difficult thing that you had to, a hurdle that you had to get over when you
Yeah.
came here? Outside of the language was just kind of like the amount of freedom, if that makes sense, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
like bringing someone that was jailed for a long time into like the free world,
What do you
right?
mean by
And
jailed?
meaning like, you're so oppressed when you're in the Soviet Union, right? Like
Hmm.
everything. You can't look left, you can't look right, you can't have an opinion, you can't wear this, you can't do that, right? It's just a very closed-minded environment,
That was a
and type of.
communist era, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's still very similar that way today, just modernized, right? And
Hmm.
disguised better. But back then it was just impossible. Like if you're like a sane human being that understood what the rest of the world operated like, you wanted that as well because you
Yeah.
understood this is not the norm. So, the thing for me was just realizing how much freedom I have all of a sudden. Like you could just do whatever. And then, if you wanted to go work, you could just walk into a place and say, "Can I have a job?" And then you didn't need to know that person. No one needed to bribe them. No one needed to be connected to them.
Hmm.
And, it was just like, I guess it took me a lot to adapt. And in that process, I just took the easy way out because I was very like anti-school and always very social, always the party boy and hanging out. And it just was very easy to get sucked into when you're in your teens. And this was, a really good time in America as well. The economy was amazing. Everyone
Mhm.
was smiling, and it was just like, right. It was just great. And before I knew, it was really a long time that I ended up screwing around, and I ended up just joining some really bad circles and ended up in being in bad places. And there were some consequences to that were legal, financial, mental, that took a toll. And probably around, I'd say, my late 20s is when I woke up. I dropped out of high school.
Okay, hold on. At what point were you selling drugs?
High school, that was like
High
a high school
school?
era. Yeah.
Okay.
So that, because I dropped out, I was probably about 10th grade, beginning of my 10th grade, something or somewhere around there. And, I was just always really had an entrepreneurial mindset. It was just unfortunately applied towards the wrong places. And I was DJing at that time also. So I was making money there. I was making like mixtapes and selling them, promoting. And then at that same time, it was just, like another thing that was easy to do when you're very socially connected, if you
Mhm.
want to say that. Yeah. And that was around like high school time. So probably, late teens, early 20s.
And I'm assuming your parents had no idea that you were selling drugs on the side, right?
Well, no, they started finding out once the lawyer letters and police phone calls started coming in because, with that comes a price. And it wasn't just like, I can't say I have a perfect record for drug dealing. I was not really good at not getting caught.
Yeah.
And, it just really spiraled out of control because it got deeper and deeper and worse. And
Wow.
one of the situations where it essentially got me incarcerated. And I, in that moment, had like the biggest awakening when I realized, like, what the hell am I doing? This just
Yeah.
gotten out of control really quickly.
And all of a sudden your freedom is captured away from you. And then that's when people normally wake up and say, whoa. So what was that like being in jail and what were you thinking? You're gonna get out and do what?
Yeah, I mean, thank God it was a very short period of time. And two, the second thing that I was thinking was just, I'm going full circle now. Like, why am I living this insane, crazy, unpredictable lifestyle where, I could have been doing that back in Russia? Why am I doing that here in the land of opportunity where I'm essentially wasting a life? And, when you get a lot of people that are older and smarter constantly tell you that, you're wasting a talent, it finally starts to sink in moments like that. And, when I got through that phase, I just put my head down and really cut out all the distractions, all the bad influence, all the bad contacts, and never picked my head up since.
Okay. So what kind of jobs did you take initially? And did you go to college essentially to finish your education or what happened?
No, I have zero education outside of the little bit in Russia and, the few grades that I've done here.
So no GED?
Oh, no, I did. Yes, I did. Yeah, that was just
Okay.
like
Okay.
a requirement. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that's actually, GED was actually a pivotal moment. It's funny you bring that up. It was when I realized how much potential I really had, because up until that moment, I just thought I was like just stupid when it came to book smart, being book smart, right? Like I knew I had the street smarts and I knew
Mhm.
I had tons of common sense and I had the charisma and I had the sales skills and all that creativity. But I've always wondered, why I couldn't be book smart, like why I couldn't pay attention in school. And I wasn't until I had to go for the GED test that I didn't really get a chance to prepare outside of a book on Amazon that I ordered. And I kind of skimmed through it like for about like a week or two in between of hanging out with my friends till 2 in the morning. And then I just passed the test without like completely winging it. And that moment I realized that, okay, like I really should probably do something with the skills that I have.
And what did you decide to do?
Started taking jobs, and luckily for me, I didn't have to jump around too much because I was a bad boy. I was reporting to a probation officer that required me to have a job. And because you're literally like fresh out of charges and you've never been in a field before, you're trying to figure your life out. You don't even know what you're capable of doing. They put you in touch with like a staffing agency, and the staffing agency is like a temp agency. Well, they're just give you a job for a week or two or three. And the
Mhm.
place that you work for that required, someone to fill that position. If they like you, they'll keep you. So I had about 2 to 3 different jobs, and one was like selling pharmaceuticals over the phone. to doctors. The other
Mhm.
one was like watching trucks get loaded with carpets. And the
Wow.
third one, yeah, and the third one happened to be like a plumbing supply where they sold like, faucets and toilets and tubs and things like that. And this was during the time where it was just pre meltdown of the economy, right? And the real estate market was just super hot. So, I'm working at this place for like 2 weeks and I'm starting to talk to like plumbers and electricians. And they're like, driving around in Hummers and Corvettes. And I'm like, something just doesn't make sense here. Like, these guys are not supposed to be making this kind of money.
Mm.
So when I started going up higher up the ladder and started talking to like the developers and the builders and the designers, that's when I realized that this was a very interesting industry for me. And I ended up staying at that place for more than 2 weeks. I ended up being there for like a year. I quickly grew ranks all the way up to like a showroom sales manager, moved on to another place, but all within that same, industry, right? Like
Mhm.
kitchens and baths and stuff and plumbing.
Mhm.
And then like shortly after that, I just realized that I have to start, working on my own business for sure.
So, how long were you at that plumbing, kitchen, and bath supply store?
Well, I had probably about like 4 or 5 different jobs. After
Oh,
that
okay.
one, I thought I was going to be there forever and gain all this experience, but the economy started to kind of take a turn
Uh-huh.
and the market changed a little bit. So I was let go from there. And then I thought, well, since I definitely know I want to start a business, why don't I just go jump around a whole bunch of places, which essentially are going to be my competitors in the future? And it's okay if it looks bad on my resume because I'm not going to care about my resume in 2 years. And I ended up doing that. I had like 4 different companies that I work for that are all in the same field, probably like a year each or so. And then while I was at the last one, I started my company and then I left.
Oh, okay. And so, how old were you when you started your business?
So I'm 34 now, 28.
28. Okay.
Hmm.
And so, what was that journey like for you? Because you said you always knew that you wanted to start your business, but was there something like you woke up one morning and you said, "That's it, I'm going to quit all my other jobs and I'm going to start my company"? And was that Imperial Kitchen and Bath or was it something else?
Yeah, no, that's been the first one and my main core business still. I have 2 others outside of that, but that is the main one that still is the
Yeah.
winner.
Okay, so what was that? Did you have some kind of like, because I talk to people all the time and they just say some people do have like, okay, one day I woke up and I said, I
Aha
don't want to.
moment.
Yeah. One day I woke up, don't want to be this 9 to 5 anymore and they just quit. Some people save money on the side, kind of do a side hustle first. So what was that journey like for you?
I didn't have that moment because I knew, not that I knew now I know, but I didn't know back then, is just from a very early age, that's just what I was meant to do. I was meant to lead, I was meant to control and manage and analyze and get creative and structural and efficient and all those things that would be required of a CEO, COO, CFO,
Mhm.
CTO, CMO, right? All your C levels that make up a company, right? To run that would need to run successfully. So whether it was drug dealing or DJing and selling CDs on Craigslist, or then shoveling snow when I was a tiny kid, it's like just like Gary Vee says, right? That's why he got attracted to my stories because it's very similar. I was
Mhm.
the first kid with the shovel while my friends just wanted to sit and play PlayStation, and just do stuff. I
Mhm.
would say, I mean, we could go and make some money. Yeah, I understand it's going to be tough and we're going to sweat, but this is money that we could then go and buy and do a lot more things with and then still have our parents' allowance money. Right.
Mhm.
So I was always that kid. So I don't think I had a moment. It's just
Mhm.
that it was the potential and that fire and the goal and all of that was hidden by just bad direction and just clouded
Mhm.
judgment.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And did you start your company on the side essentially, or you quit and you went full force? And did you save any money before you started?
No, no, definitely. I mean, based on what I see and based on all the interactions I have with a lot of, contemporaries of mine that have similar stories, they all say that same thing works best, is which is starting something while you're still employed. It's challenging for sure, but there's never a perfect moment. So, like, to come to that decision of quitting is very hard and it's just much easier to transition. And that's what I did as well.
Okay, so you quit and you just opened up your company.
So it was like a soft transition, meaning when the company started going full force already, but it was already well into its existing, then I quit. Not like I quit and then I said, okay, now I'm going to start this business, you know?
Okay. Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. Got it. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about Imperial Kitchen and Bath. What do you guys focus on? What is your sole purpose? Who do you guys serve? And tell us a little bit more about your company.
Definitely, yeah. We are an importer and distributor of kitchen cabinetry and bathroom vanities. So essentially cabinetry. Our specialty is new development. So we serve 80% of our client base is B2B. It's developers, architects, interior designers, hospitality, multi-unit projects. And then 20% of it is retail that comes through social, Facebook ads, or just, through our physical location, which is a showroom that we have here in Edgewater, New Jersey.
And where do you guys source the kitchen cabinets? Because I've looked through your guys' Instagram. They're very European like. So where do you guys get the super cool kitchen cabinets and gadgets?
Yeah, so the super cool look is actually made by everyone now. So you can get it from a very quick low end source like China, Thailand, Vietnam. You can get it from a mid end semi custom source like America, Canada. Or we go to Spain and Italy and Germany for the higher end options. So that's where we source.
Okay, got it. And so when you started your company, did you already have connections in the different vendors and suppliers? Or did you have to go out there and search to get your clientele and to get your kitchen supplies and all the good stuff?
Oh yeah, no, it had both had to be done completely from scratch.
Okay, and what was your research like? Did you go to Google?
No, I'm a lot more aggressive than that. So Google is what, everyone does, right? That's everyone's
Yeah.
go-to. So in my world, you really have to be boots on the ground and you really got to go and touch and feel and shake hands and kiss babies. And I just decided to jump on a plane and visit factories and go meet vendors and like really just get in the face and show people that I'm in business. And this is like before I had a showroom, before I had any credibility, because I figured if I go hard on the offense, I would be taken serious. Because in my industry, if you don't have a lot of credibility, if you don't have a physical presence, if you don't have a buying power, vendors are not likely to entertain you and give you, an authorized dealer relationship or, permission to
Mhm.
cover an area. So I decided to do that. And I flew all over Europe. I went to Germany, Italy, Spain to source people, like literally just knocking doors. I've
Wow.
went to a lot of trade shows in the United States, in Italy, in Germany, in Spain, and put all those connections together essentially that way.
Wow, amazing. Oh my goodness. You're the very first person on this show that actually said to get my company started, I actually flew out of country and started knocking on these warehouses and vendors. That is so genius because, like you said, some people are, going directly to Google and sitting in the comfort of their own home, but you strapped up and flew across country and started building those connections.
Yeah, the analogy here would be is back to my drug dealing days is, you have to go to the source. You have to get as close to the source as possible if you want the best quality and the best price. And I just said, you know what? It probably works the same way with kitchen cabinets.
Oh my
And literally it does because the companies that I like ended up engaging with, come to find out, they make it for some of the biggest brands that I was competing with. You know what I mean? So you never know until you really look, and it goes back to your point. Like you should really, if you're in a heavy lifting business like mine, like if you're selling t-shirts, it's probably not necessary for you to like right now fly to China and go hook up with
Yeah.
a factory. You could probably do that through Ali. But if you're doing something like me where you're going to be selling an average price ticket of a $15,000 to $20,000 order that is very cumbersome and large and needs to ship, and the quality of it really needs to matter, you should probably get on a plane and spend some time meeting people in factories.
Okay, okay. So I gotta ask, where did you go first when you decided to fly across country? How was that conversation like? Because you were completely brand new. You said you were 28 years old when you started this, right?
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So where did you go first and what was that interaction like? Were you scared? Were you nervous? Or you were like, full force, I'm going to do it and see what happens?
No, like this is where I shine. This is just what I love to do. Like I am just a marketer and a salesman at heart. And that's what I'm really good at. You just need to put me in a room and the deal, the project, whatever it is that is on the table is going to get moved forward, if not done.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my approach to everything. And First country was Spain. And I remember, when I started digging deep and understanding where some of these cabinets were made, I understood it was like very common in our industry to keep industries and factories in pockets, right? So logistics work out better that way, right? You have freight
Mhm.
companies that all come to one area, and airport rather, not too far, or a port or something like that. So there was a specific area in Spain outside of Barcelona, outside of Valencia rather, that was known for that. So that's where I went first. And the people are just very friendly. And this is post, world meltdown, right? So this is
Mhm.
early teens. We're talking 14, 15. America was just starting to be in a pretty decent good place, but Europe was still like on their knees because, we melted their economies down. And Spain and Italy, they were like really in bad shape. So these factories were dying to get more sales. And we are one of their biggest consumers. We're one of their
Mhm.
biggest markets, the United States. So because these factories are so small and a lot of them is older generation, they're baby boomers, they're
Mhm.
not going on Instagram. They're not going on Facebook. They're not going and looking for guys like me. So when a
Mhm.
guy like me shows up, it's almost like I did their job for them, and I knew that going into it. So I like just leverage what it was all about, And again, it's just sales and negotiations, right, and things like that. And for me, it was all the leverage. It was an American guy that had a big Instagram account because I was big on Instagram, and I had a lot of leverage that normally you would do otherwise.
Mhm. And did you schedule an appointment with the CEO, or you kind of just showed up and said, "Okay, who do I need to talk to?"
Yeah, it literally, they're like super in Europe. It's so unofficial. Here you have to go through your levels, right, of
Yeah.
management. And there it's just like, hey, yeah, you'll go literally from the receptionist who just handed you an espresso right into the CEO's office. And it was
Wow.
it was a bit of a culture shock, but in that moment, really just kind of fast forwarded 5 years of my life because I realized like this is it. Like this is how big deals get done, just like this, two guys in a room talking about problems and money, and that's it. Because in America, it's a lot more layered,
Strict.
if you will,
Mhm.
yeah, and strict, and it's harder to get access to.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh my goodness. I'm sure you got many more stories to share with us. But Tim, I did want to ask you, how long did it take your business to start seeing some real traction in the beginning stages? You went out there, you built the connections. Did you open up a warehouse right after that? Or how long did it take you to get clients and see some real traction coming in?
Because I'm big on marketing and I was all about Gary Vee at that moment, I really started implementing tactics that my industry was just not even aware of, using Instagram and YouTube and SEO and really good websites. This is at a time where someone in the kitchen and bath industry didn't even really know what a website really did for them. And I already knew that it's going to be right around a corner. So if I position myself now, I'll be there to hit the wave. So I started getting clients like within a few months and would literally just cash back in, cash back in. We stopped doubling after third year in our gross. Yeah, the company was just going very quickly.
Oh, so continue to double every single year.
Yeah, yeah, for the
Wow.
first 3 years.
And you attribute that to really the social media, the post. Were you doing like behind the scenes and showcasing these
Yeah,
clients' remodels and before and after pictures?
everything. I was literally what Gary Vee stands for. Like I was that. I was in your face, selfie style, vlog style, audio only. Someone takes over my account, I take over someone else's account. Collabs with influencers. I mean, like really progressive stuff for the time that this was done at. 17, 16.
Mhm.
People now are still like have to be pushed to do it in my industry. So it really helped me out. And 95% of our business did and still does come from Instagram.
Wow. That's really
Yeah.
big. That's really big. It's interesting the way that you say that, people in your industry are still kind of catching on to it. And we're in 2021 where everything is on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Clubhouse. I mean, there's so many mediums out there and people
Oh
are
yeah.
still kind of hesitant to play in the waters, but you just went full force. You saw that it worked and you continue to do what you did best, which is amazing. Awesome. So, Tim, did you raise any capital? Did you have to borrow any money to get these big orders and connect with these vendors, suppliers? overseas, or how did that happen?
No, no. Again, the leverage and the branding and the salesmanship allowed me to negotiate some very favorable deals without any kind of buying into it or inventory or warehousing. So I started off with about a $10,000 investment from my sister.
Hmm.
And that was it. That was just like to get the website up and get my accounting in order and get some legal protection and really, spend some time on an airplane, obviously traveling. And that's it, because the way it works in our business is, it's not transactional, meaning you're not going to give me the money right now and pick up this kitchen, right? Or pick up this,
Hmm.
vanity, right? You're going to wait the 3 to 4 weeks. So there's a deposit process, then there's a procurement process. So there was never a need for a warehouse, right? So there was no overhead. So
Hmm.
it was just bootstrap, from the beginning.
And you opened a showroom. When did you open a showroom?
3 years ago.
Okay. And so do you have a warehouse to stock all these supplies, or you don't need that still to this day?
Yep, still same model now, except just the showroom allows us to present more and attract a bigger, wider audience.
Got it. Okay. And you think that kind of helped bring in more clients and kind of have like the feeling of seeing these cabinets and seeing the products on site?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially on our larger projects, like we just finished a project in Brooklyn where it was, just north of $250,000. When you have a transaction that large, the developer and the owner of that multi-unit really wants to touch that cabinet before they
Yeah.
give you that deposit. So yeah, it's almost a necessity when you get to a certain size, I would say, in my business. Otherwise, you just simply won't break the barrier.
Tim, what about mentors? Did you have any mentors besides Gary Vee when you initially started the company?
No, not at all.
Wow, you did this all solo by yourself, just hustling out of country and bootstrapped and just working your way in.
Books, yeah, books, YouTube mainly. That was my mentors.
What kind of books? Is it business books or more like towards your industry?
No, no, it's just straight business books. Just always the one thing, you also have to be sharpening your saw. And you always, always, always want to make sure that you're, staying ahead of the curve, but also know the history. So there's tons of information about business management, marketing, then you dive into each subject deeper, copywriting, direct marketing and all these kinds of different topics. So that was just it for me. I was just obsessing about that stuff and really consumed as much as I possibly could. And yeah, like I literally just did not leave my laptop. I was just always head down learning something and putting something together and then writing it down. And instead of just kind of saying, okay, that's cool, the point of the reading was is that I would not just highlight and put that book back to refer to later. I would literally stop and say, okay, this thing that I just learned while it's fresh in my mind, how can I apply that to my business? Because this is the whole point of me reading this book. And that's my little hack that I just have to do. If I read a book, I cannot not like apply that to the business, unless obviously the book just doesn't have any good value. But
Right.
considering the book has good value, like I have to extract that, but not like just mentally. Like it has to be something physically has to be done, because that is a connection that then kind of plants the egg for that seed to grow, because you can't
Hmm.
implement these big ideas that you read in a book overnight, right? But
Hmm.
without planting the seed, they'll never even start to happen. So that's my little hack. And I just kept on doing that over and over and over. I still do that. I have this rule where I have to read 10 pages of a book every morning. So like right now I'm reading Traction. I forget the author, and everyone kept on like recommending it. So I said, you know what? And then like in the beginning, there was already like a really cool hack, like a cool time hack that I wrote down right away. I added it to my journal, boom, boom, boom. And then now it's like part of my day and it saved me 25 minutes, So it's those things that allowed me not to have mentors, not to have people show me exactly how to do it. I kind of just took a little bit from everything and made it work best for me. And, that was kind of my approach.
Books are so, so powerful and again, overlooked in so many ways these days. So, what kind of business books would you recommend for our immigrant entrepreneurs listening? Maybe one or two that you have in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what topics, right? So if you're in my world and you're looking to be an entrepreneur or to start a small business, the one thing that really changed my mind, the first book I ever read before, I only, up until like recently, I only read 2 to 3 books. And then I just spent this time just building the business and growing it. And then I started having more time to read more books. But in the beginning, the ones that really changed it were Gary's books, of course. So Crush
Mhm.
It is a big one. Thank You Economy is a really good one. And Thank You Economy is very similar to Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. He
Mhm.
recently tragically passed away, which is
Mhm.
really crazy, but he was a revolutionary thinker. I would like to say, I mean, I'm sure I could be corrected, but I would like to say he's really responsible for what Amazon is today. He
Mhm.
just doesn't get the credit because, Zappos was Amazon, and
Yes.
literally to be bought for $1 billion back then, was just astronomical. So he probably didn't even realize how big his idea was and what he had created, but Jeff Bezos did. And, he took it to the next level. But that guy was just all about the consumer and being consumer
Yes.
centric. And that's something that I am very lucky that I kind of embedded early on. And that is my ethos. And I pass that down to my employees as well. That customer is why we're here. Not the name on the door, but the customer. That's who we're here to serve.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's a really helpful book. So I would recommend that one, Delivering Happiness.
And the way that he built his culture, the different strategies that he employed in his company to really just stay on the phone with the customer, chit chat
Yep.
all
Yep.
day long. There's no productivity, there's no punching out calls, there's no
Yep.
quota to me. And they really just drastically grew. And I think he even had one of my guests on the show, he actually went to his boot camp. I don't know
Mm,
if they do it now, but they used to do boot camps where he actually got to meet Tony Hsieh. And, they were just talking about the way they built their culture, what worked for them, and had an amazing experience. So, yeah. Totally, totally. Zappos has an amazing culture, and still to this day, they still
yeah.
thrive. So, okay. So, I do want to touch on the fact that an immigrant at 12 years old going into the drug dealing business, dropped out of high school, and now he's a book nerd.
Well, you have to correct that. I did not sell drugs at 12 years old. I came here at
No,
12
no,
years
no.
old. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. No, 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 no. Yes, you're totally right.
My,
Just the transition from 12 years old, and then dropping out of high school, you know, being incarcerated, selling drugs. And had no intention to ever even study. You always thought that I love to be street smart, but I had no idea that I still had the capacity to be book smart as well. So
right.
it's really important to notate that on the show, because a lot of immigrants are coming and they're saying, you know what, I don't have the talent to do this, or I have a broken accent, or people are not going to understand me because I wear
Hmm.
different clothes, or people are not going to understand my culture or the way I'm enthusiastic about one thing or another. But really, to capture the fact that anyone can change, anyone can read books, anyone can be self-taught like
Yep.
yourself. And there's so many different things that we can apply to our lives to really focus on that American dream, on those passions and those goals. And you're just shown proof, just examples upon examples of how you were able to build that. So I just wanted to hone in on that and say, amazing job.
Thank you. I mean, it's the market is the market is the market, like Gary Vee says.
Mhm.
If you deliver something of value and you're really passionate about it, and you know your craft, you know your service, you know your product, and you really done your homework, it does not matter what you look like, where you came from, what you sound like. No one cares about that. The market's just going to want to care about the product and the service and the value that you create. That's it. And if
Right.
you get your head around that, you'll stop being, a little complexive and about all the other things that might be stopping you, because I totally get what you're saying. And there's a lot of people that I still know that might have been tied to a community, let's say, for example, for a little too long, and they haven't had a chance to look outside. And then they realize there's this whole different world, and that nobody does care that they don't speak perfect English. And you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So, yeah, good point.
Yeah, and there's so many international people, immigrants that barely speak English, but they have mom and pop shops and clothing stores and supermarkets, and they're making it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's definitely possible because we live in such an amazing country of freedom and success. So awesome. So, Tim, I wanted to ask you, how do you stay productive throughout the days? Do you have any tactics that you do? Do you write any kind of goals for the day or for the week? Do you do anything, or you're kind of just on the fly? You need to get stuff done.
No, no, I'm very straightforward. I have two kind of parts to my day. I have the morning routine, which is just get up as early as I can. So like 6 or so is the earliest for me. I'm not your 4:30,
Yeah.
4:45. But no. That's just never gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I'm the 6, but on the road at 7, meaning I'm in the office like usually by like 7:30 latest. So from 7:30 till probably about like 9, I would say, it's just kind of the 10 pages of a book. It's catching up on some social, answering some DMs from last night, catching up on some blogs and some headlines from in the news, and preparing my Asana for the team for the day, right? Asana is just a project management software. But
Mhm.
right, so organizing the team for the day. So this way I can get on with my day and they know, their tasks prioritized. And then the rest of the day, I just live by my calendar. I am a slave to a calendar, meaning that everything is blocked for. I don't like time wasters. I don't let people just show up, call in, and I'm very strict about that. So
Mhm.
that helps a lot because as you get busier and as you scale and as you start to invest and open up different businesses, which I have now, your time is really the asset. And it's hard to, you know, duplicate yourself. So you have to delegate and you have to let go of certain things. But in order to do that, you have to have really good tested systems in place and trusted people in place as well. So luckily I have both, and it just allowed me to kind of, again, just live by my calendar. So this way I know, like what I have, and it's literally just enough time to take lunch, and I go all the way up to like 7 o'clock is when I'm like wrapping up usually. And I'll come
Mhm.
home and maybe for an hour or so do whatever the fire emails that need to be cleared that day. I'll give that maybe another 30, 45 minutes, and then that's it.
So it's really important to start a system very, very early on in any business stages, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, a lot of people just biologically work different, right? Some people
Yeah.
just cannot function early on, which I, totally respect. But I'm one of them. Like, I have tons of friends. Like, I have a lot of friends in the financial world. Those guys are, even though they start late, but because they're in the gym and they work so late, they're up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I'm like, I don't like that. Just doesn't even make sense. So I prefer to just kind of keep a balance where I could go to sleep sort of late-ish, but also don't have to wake up like super crazy early. But
Mhm.
yeah, so it definitely is important because I think a lot of people argue this, the brain guys of the world, that it sets up the day, right? That first hour, that first 30 minutes, whatever it is. I mean, I
Mhm.
think I think so. But just on top of that, let's say if you're not into that, just having a plan that was done the day before really helps. So I'd like to say my day starts the night before. So before I
Mhm.
leave the office, I'm already kind of organizing for the next day. So this way, tomorrow is not a complete, like a shockwave of things that I just need to do early on in the morning when you're not ready for that.
Right, right. Thank you so much for those tips. Those are also amazing tips. So, Tim, I wanted to ask you, and I wanted to switch gears and talk about mistakes and failures. There's always a story behind the mistakes we make. And I wanted to ask, are there any mistakes or failures you'd like to share with us where you saw a positive shift after implementing new things?
Yes, I've learned that you really should have contracts for everything. and
Oh, nice.
and the story behind that is that I lost probably 30 to $40,000 to a vendor overseas. I just couldn't do anything about, frankly, because I had zero legal leverage.
Handshake deals.
Sort of. I mean, we were like, because when you're going so fast, you're thinking like we're electronically communicating. Like this has got to be used as some sort of evidence if God forbid, crap hits the fan.
Hmm.
But it turns out that doesn't matter.
Wow.
And especially when you're, crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah. So definitely the thing that I learned the most is just by being burned a lot. And that is, the other side of that is to just have contracts for everything. You could trust someone and shake their hand and hug them, and that's great. And you shouldn't
Hmm.
change that attitude. You should keep that attitude, because I will always bet on people. I'll always bet on good people, right, that make the world go round. But you should still just say, hey, I know we just hugged it out for like an hour, but I have this tiny, small, little formality. Just need you to sign this paper. You can
Yeah.
look it over, have your counsel look it over. Totally cool. I know it's awkward. I don't like it either, but hey, that's the time we live in. Right. And like, that's what you got to do. And a lot of
Hmm.
people are just super awkward about it. And I was one of those people, very scared to like make people sign stuff, just quick to grab the money because it's easy and you
Yeah.
need it. And yeah, now I learned that, I'm in the business of, I like to say that a lot right now. I'm in the business of saying a lot more no's than I say yeses. And I remember
Hmm.
about 3 years back, a really wealthy individual told me that when you start saying a lot more no's, you're starting to reach a new level of success that you'll appreciate.
Hmm.
Which
And
which means that a lot of people just come to you with bullshit, and you need to say no a lot.
yeah, 9 years of experience, right?
Yeah.
And so you mentioned that you own several other companies. What are those? Do you mind sharing those?
Yeah, definitely. So about a year ago, right before COVID hit, I've launched Roman Group Media, which is a consulting media company, marketing agency that specializes in essentially doing what I went through, except turbocharged now that I have a formula for it. And is just taking a small business from, let's say, I don't know, 500,000 to 2 million via social media, email campaigns, marketing, Facebook, Instagram ads, web development, e-commerce. So that was about a year ago. I have a partner in that, COO, and another team member. So we mainly have been specializing in websites a lot lately. During the pandemic, a lot of people realized they needed to get on the internet.
Yeah.
And outside of that, about a few months ago, I've launched a DTC brand called Cabinet with a K. It is very similar to what Imperial is, except we're now in e-commerce. So with Imperial, I'm a showroom that serves my, direct local market. But
Hmm.
now we have an e-commerce store that serves United States, and we're quality, affordable cabinets shipped directly to your door without the showroom markup. And that's being funded. So it's not really can't call it a startup because it's a proven idea. Technically, we already like do that business,
Hmm.
but it's
Hmm.
a startup for us. And we're in a seed round right now, raising 200,000. We're halfway there. So
Wow.
just launched about a month ago, like a soft launch.
So, what made you decide to kind of drift away and expand into these different markets? I can totally understand the e commerce with the cabinets because you're already in that business, you're in that industry, you know what sells, you have all that data and all that historical data that proves what kind of cabinets are sold. But what about the marketing? What made you decide to go into that industry?
I didn't at all. I was almost forced to. So one, I kept on getting people. So after the book launched, I had dozens of DMs from people all over the world just saying, oh, my dad's in construction and, I did this and oh, I'm an accountant and I hate it. I want to do this. And wow, your story spoke to me. I'm also an immigrant. Like I was getting so many of these DMs and a lot of them were just like rah rah, but a good portion of them were like, would you consider consulting? Name your price. And I was like, really? Like seriously? It's like
Wow.
someone would pay? And then I was like, all right, I don't know. So like first guy was like, yeah, name your price. I was like, I don't know, $100 an hour. And the guy was like, all right, cool, let's do a Zoom. So I did two of those and I was like, next person that asked me, I'm gonna say 200. Next person asked, I said 200. Okay, cool. And I was like, all right, next person that asked me, I'm gonna say 300. And then out of that, it just like people just kept on coming in and saying, like, oh, I have a showroom. I'm in Canada and I can't get it off the ground. What can I do to like, boost up the sales? And, what would you recommend? And a lot of them were like in my space, but some of them were like real estate agents, just contractors. So yeah, it was kind of natural. And then during the empathy event launch in New York, right before COVID, they had a big launch in the city. I was talking to Gary, and then he was like, dude, whenever you talk about marketing, you just light the hell up. But when you talk about cabinets, like, not so much. And I was like, I don't know, maybe there's something there. And he was like, listen, you need to like really scratch that. And then that plus all the demand, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Why not? It's a nice segue. And it's like, I can't consider it a side hustle because I'm not the only one working on it, and I have help. And, I'm kind of the I would say hands off CEO, just
hmm
kind of management from afar. But yeah,
hmm
it's, you have to do a little bit of a lot these days
Yeah.
in order to get to where you want to go.
It's shining your talents through in so many ways, all these three different companies, but you're also passionate in cabinets and you also have that passion and drive through marketing that you probably didn't even know you had.
Right.
So, and that's good that you were able to mediate that and to actually take action because a lot of people don't. So, Tim, what does the American dream mean to you?
The ability to make a decision whenever you want, however you want, and put that on paper and immediately put that to plan. And if you are good enough and if you are willing to take some punches, you are guaranteed success. That's what the American dream kind of looks like to me in a nutshell.
Lots of hashtags. I can see them coming through. I love it. Okay. What are some things you would advise the next aspiring immigrant that wants to start their own business?
Right now, because the market that we're in and just the times considered, not generally, like in generally, I think my opinion and advice would be completely different, but times considered. So I want to be practical here and give someone
hmm
some value because COVID's not going anywhere for the next 12 to 24 months, probably.
Right.
And, this is just a reality. And then if your reality is next 12 to 24 months, then you got to deal with it. Right. And I would just say that today more than ever, you have to be able to make a dollar work like two, because as we're inflating as a country, as we're going through financial turmoil, country's never been divided like ever before. It is just harder and harder to do things, and things are going to get more and more expensive, whether it's media buying, right? I remember 5 years ago, I paid $5 on Facebook and I would get 1,000 hits. And now that's costing me $25. That's
hmm
like quite a difference. That's happening across the board. And I think people just really need to be mindful before just jumping in and thinking that, hey, it's a cool idea. A few of my friends said it's probably going to be successful. Let me go open up this boutique hardware store. I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever you name it. Like, you really, really, really need to do your research and then need to have the ability to make a dollar work like two. Because during these times, you're going to need both of those skills. Outside of that, I mean, it's just really hard work, which immigrants already know how to do. So that shouldn't be a hard feat. And consistency is, a lot of people, family included, are going to tell you things that you might not want to hear because everyone has an opinion. Everyone is an accountant. Everyone is a lawyer. Everyone's a doctor when it comes to asking for their opinion. So you just need to
Yes.
take that with a grain of salt, and don't forget that your mission is your mission and you're on your own mission. And that the second you let people into it and onto it, it's not your mission anymore. So just keep your head down and just grind away.
I love it. I love it. And I think someone said on my show, if you're an immigrant, you're already an entrepreneur.
Exactly. Yeah.
Coming here, you're halfway there. You just got to implement your idea.
100%. That's good. I love that, actually.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you so, so much for coming on my show. And your journey is going to inspire so many immigrant entrepreneurs listening to be able to build their dreams and continue with their passions. And you're just showing an example of that. Anybody can do that. So I really appreciate your time and I wish you the best of successes.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If there are any links that were mentioned in this episode, make sure to check them out on my website under this episode to find all the links conveniently located in the show notes. I just wanted to ask for a quick favor if you could please leave a review wherever you're at listening to this podcast. Also, if you're an immigrant entrepreneur and would love to be on my podcast, please email me and we'll get connected. I'll see you guys all next time for another exciting and impactful episode. Take care.